Hello from Dallas. I'm actually out here a week early. In a week, I'll be married, so that's what I'm out here for. What we're talking about today is the lull that happens in the middle part of a long-term project. And this is something that affects everybody who's trying to make a jump from doing jams and prototypes and simple student multi-class, multi-week projects into really longer arc stuff. Whether we're talking minimum kind of 2-3 months, we start to feel this. 6 months to a year plus, we absolutely start to feel it. But it's something that's hidden. And the reason why is, if you do a game jam, there's sort of two different phases of a short-term project. There's the period where you can kind of really do a lot of hacky prototyping because it's just going to be everything that you do is exciting and it just has to work at all. And you get this really rapid, significant, every change is noticeable because it's a whole other feature added. And then there's the wrapping it up, where in that final stretch you start to feel also safe doing some really hacky kind of shortcuts, because you don't have to live in the code base, because you're probably going to, go on from it and never use it again. Or if you reap code, refactor it. But it gives you also this thrill of like you're tying up loose ends, you're finishing pieces, you're seeing the polish and the pieces snap together and come together. And on a short-term project, that's all you see. Those two phases. And what happens is, sometimes people incorrectly assume that if you just spread a project out to take, like I say, a minimum, a few months, maybe half a year, maybe a year plus, they figure that you just kind of like a longer version of each of those. What happens instead is you still at the front have a pretty steep ramp of excitement and thrills and rapid prototyping way to get the core mechanics figured out. At the end, and we're talking like literally maybe anywhere from the last week to the last month, depending on the scale of the game, is where you still have that thrill of everything you're finishing is snapping together, coming together, seeing polishing, making clear and crisp decisions, seeing it just really start to feel like it's finished. But in the middle, it doesn't just lay them out so it spreads those out. Those are still right at the start and right at the end. In the time in the middle, there is just this drudgery in which a lot of the work that happens isn't so visible. A lot of the work that happens is it's very subtle things that they add up. They make a difference. They absolutely matter. It's one of those reasons why a seemingly simple game that's been polished for a year has a much better chance of impressing strangers than a game which seems similar or in concept or has kind of the same hook but got, kicked out of a game jam. It's because of that little bit of time in the middle where you're doing all kinds of little changes. And a lot of the time also gets eaten up in either wading through your own tangled knots that you tied through the rapid prototyping early on that you haven't yet refactored, or the work involved in refactoring it so it's more extensible, more robust, more reusable, etc. And even though that it's part of the cost, and some people think, well, okay, why not just front load that work into the early phase by planning it out better? Again, like you can't short circuit that. A lot of the reason for that early on, that thrashing, that rapid kind of coding practice, is because you're not quite sure yet during the early beginning phase what you're building. When you can really architect out and avoid that work is if you're really just copying exactly something someone else has done. If you're trying to do anything at all original, even just some original features chucked into a kind of an existing code base, it's going to involve some of that thrashing because a lot of what you're doing is going to get thrown away. And so it's to say that literally part of the cost just becomes accounting for, planning for, knowing it's going to happen. Time to either, like I say, grapple with those early on short-term decisions that had to kind of get made a certain ways to make it work, to see if it was worth keeping, and or refactoring some of the stuff you are keeping so you can kind of live in it for months at a time, communicate with others on it, build off of it in a way that you don't have to step on each other's toes too much. But the reason I mention this, especially when I say like it's kind of inevitable, there's not really a good way around it to make something that's at all original and not just a clone of somebody else's stuff, is that because it catches people off guard when it's their first time doing a longer term project, it can be really discouraging to a lot of people. It can start to feel like, am I just running out of steam? Am I losing excitement? Am I bored with this? And it's important to know, like, you are going through exactly what anyone goes through who does a project that's at least a few months or more. That is what the heart, the body, the middle part of development always consists of. It's part of why in Game Keto Club, for people's first pitches, we limit scope typically to 1 month. And for their second pitch, third pitch, whatever, we allow it to inflate up to 2 to 5 months, is because when someone's first time doing it, they still kind of need that ramp of excitement early on. Everything's a new feature. Or when you switch right from that, essentially kind of game jam scale, into finishing mode of seeing, good stuff kind of snapping together. And it gets really uncomfortable when you start to spread in those middle phases. All the different kind of challenges that arise from it start to involve motivation, start to involve communication, it's a slog. The time kind of blurs together. And you can still productively use it well. You can still plan it. But all the wins are so much more minor. And, again, it's to say that you're not alone in that. Everyone goes through that. That's a part of the process. That is a part of the challenge, is staying involved in. And that it does make a difference. That it really does. That it can seem so minuscule, but all those little changes and tweaks that you can fit in when you give a project more time add up in a way that if you just take the beginning of the project, the end of the project, smack them together and chop out the middle, at best you have something people can discuss as like a potential. Oh, it has potential. This might go somewhere. It's worth investing more energy in. But for all the really nuanced reasons, is not going to actually appeal to, stick with, get shared by strangers because it's missing all those good decisions. The great gameplay stuff is really in those little nuanced decisions you can explore midway. And when I say explore, it's because partly too, like, development still, even in the middle of the project, you can really look at those months, those chunks, those quarters as like a microcosm of the whole project. Where often what you're still doing is kind of these little internal cycles of there's still a little bit of prototyping, prototype a few features, throw away some of them, prototype a few features different ways, keep one of the implementations, throw out the others. And because it's still constantly exploratory of what are we missing as an opportunity here, what is a way that we can, capitalize on the strength of what we laid so far, that's still within reach for the time we have left, and that's it. That's game development. Not doing anything wrong, doesn't mean anything wrong with you, doesn't mean anything that you're losing energy. And I think also it helps because the more the kind of games you see through this kind of cycle, it also helps motivationally because you begin to know that the excitement of that final stretch is coming around the corner. And also then kind of better anticipating, bracing yourself for it in the next project, knowing that, you don't want to front load all the excitement up front or all the excitement at the end. You kind of can spread it out of an average, knowing ride some of that momentum off the beginning, borrow some of that momentum from the future, because in the middle it's a lull a little bit, and that's part of what we're working with. So that's it for the day. Like I say, I'm in Dallas now. I realize I'm in a different time zone. Schedule is different. I'm obviously out here partially in preparation for a wedding, so our timing is going to be weird, whatever. I'll keep trying to get these videos out. If for some reason a day happens where a video didn't come out, I might release 2 short ones the next day, whatever. I'm still on a one-to-one basis for now for the moment. Speaking of which, though, we will, after the wedding, be going on a honeymoon for 2 weeks overseas, where I will not be releasing a live new video each day while we're away. What I'm probably going to do is something else, or I'm going to prepare some things in advance, and more about that later in the week. But anyway, still be one thing a day, hopefully / probably. Bye for now. Look forward to playing your games in the future.